summertime. So the question we should ask ourselves sometimes with our path that we're on is, when we're not sitting, what are we doing? Well, when you're sitting, what are you doing? But you kind of have an idea when you come to a meditation group, you're doing meditation, you're trying to be clear and aware and let go of your attachments and be focused and find some inner peace. Sounds right. When you're not in a meditation group and doing meditation, are you clear about what you're doing? Hopefully. I often find myself unclear. Clear about one thing, but it's actually the wrong thing. Like using my cell phone in the car. What am I doing? That's not clarity. That's a serious ticket. And it's just because I was unclear. I didn't, I was doing one thing and then I got distracted and started doing something else. And I lost my original clarity of what I should be doing in this moment. Didn't mean I shouldn't be on my cell phone, just not then. It wasn't a judgment. It was about what's appropriate now. And yet, I went to my cell phone because of some nagging thought that I had something to do, which comes back to some attachment to some need that I want to fulfill. So it basically came back to some sense of self that I wanted to, improve upon. That if I got this message or I read that or did that, then somehow my, purpose would be more fulfilled. I wasn't even thinking that, but that's just part of it, right? That's the intention behind the distraction, is that this will serve me better in this moment. So there's a phrase that I read by Ajahn Chah that kind of aims at the heart of some of our difficulties. Abandoning the unwholesome. It's more important than doing good. And when I first heard that statement, abandoning the unwholesome, it's more important than doing good. That was Ajahn Chah. And when I first heard that, my kind of Mahayana instinct was to say, what? I mean, more important than doing good? If I wait to abandon all of my unwholesomeness, I'll never get to doing good. So how can I wait? Do good now and deal with the unwholesomeness along the way. That's kind of the Bodhisattva, pledge. But then when you take a little journey through your day, which I did afterwards, and I examined all the unwholesomeness that I was observing in myself, but also around me, it became increasingly clear that thinking I could do real and lasting and actual good while I was still distracted, and that's an understatement, that's a nice way of saying it, distracted by my hindrances or unwholesomeness, meaning, these very frequent experiences we have, these mental difficulties that take the form of afflicting emotions. When we call them afflicting emotions, is because afflict is to cause harm. But who does it cause harm to? To oneself. Usually when we experience anger, the object of our anger doesn't actually receive it. The subject does. You're the target of your anger. That's an afflictive emotion. And it's pretty hard. If that unwholesome state of mind is arising, it's pretty hard to actually do any good. And so too with some of the other unwholesome states of mind, like having strong, the 5 hindrances that the Buddha talked about, of having like strong sensual desires, having anger, ill will, having real lack of motivation, boredom, or dullness in your mind. Like just don't want to get out of bed. Well, it's hard to do good if you don't get out of bed. And restlessness, like I always need something else. Need something else. It's a real common one, isn't it? Like your present moment is not enough. That's restlessness. When you feel like you need more, that's restless mind. It's an afflictive emotion. It's an unwholesome state. Because instead of turning your mind within to observe that experience, it's always looking outward to see how you can fill the gap. And that's completely futile. Like that will never end. And there's skeptical doubt. That's the 5th hindrance that Buddha spelled out for us, or unwholesome state of mind, which is like either the teachings don't work or I can't do it. There's also skeptical doubt in oneself, like I can't deal with this. I'm not good enough. There's self-criticism, sometimes it's called. But self-criticism is a form of skeptical doubt. The Buddha's description of that unwholesome state of mind is really like doubting your own abilities to realize your natural clarity. Some of meditation is aimed at having a glimpse of that natural clarity so that you can overcome skeptical doubt in yourself when you experience it. You can come back to a sense of, I may not be feeling this now, or I may not even be aware of it now, but I know I have had moments in my practice of deep clarity and wholeness. And I know it's part of me. And I can return to that. That's the antidote to skeptical doubt, is a trust in your own mind. Because you've experienced it. Not because someone told you. And if you look at your experience, it's there. It just gets very obscured because of these unwholesome states of mind. So when Ajahn Chah said, abandoning unwholesomeness is more important than doing good. We're talking about stages of our path. We all have to reach the place of doing good. That's why we're here. But you can't skip over dealing with your own and all of the unwholesomeness that's around us. Now, abandoning unwholesomeness not only in yourself, and this is something I started to contemplate after I read this, while I was walking around. When you start to contemplate unwholesome states of mind in your mind, you start to become aware of how much unwholesome mind there is around us. Now, we're all aware of the anger on the streets, right? And impatience and selfishness and all that sort of stuff. But when Ajahn Chah says here, abandoning unwholesomeness, he's not only talking about your unwholesomeness, but we have to abandon other people's unwholesomeness. It's so easy to react in kind to the way someone else is being aggressive or angry or sad or upset. But that too we have to abandon. If someone's really upset or angry, we can't really do good unless we abandon their anger. How are you going to help them if you haven't abandoned the negativity that they have? And don't take it as your own. This is the abandonment. So yeah, it's really true. We can't really get into the good work, the work of helping and doing good, unless we abandon this real negative states of mind, not only within ourselves, but because we're interconnected and we're dealing with a sense of, interbeing and interdependence here, we have to abandon also the unwholesomeness we see around us. If we don't, basically we are reinforcing deep patterns. It's called karmic patterns in our own mind and in the world we live in, so that it becomes harder to abandon, because it becomes more deeply ingrained. The more, whatever you practice becomes stronger. If you practice peacefulness, love, and patience, acceptance, and compassion, that becomes stronger, right? If we practice, it's all practice. If we practice judgment and, anger, that becomes stronger. So, and whatever becomes stronger becomes harder to abandon. You don't want to end up being old and angry, because by then, it's going to be really hard to change. I'll give you an example. I was at the day before yesterday. I was at the supermarket in Tokyo at Supersol, and I was just leaving, and as I'm leaving, I hear this shouting going on. And I don't know, this is weird, but where is this shouting happening? It's actually two women, but old women, two old women. And there's one woman, she went into a taxi, and the taxi pulled up, and she looked to be about 65. I guess that's not so old. Excuse me if I said old. She's middle-aged, older, senior middle-aged. Let's say 70. But she was shouting at someone who was like 85, 87, like late 80s, okay? And she was shouting back. So you had these two older women shouting at each other. I don't know even about what, but the woman in the taxi then ended the shouting saying, and I heard her say to her friend, she said, I'm going to be like her, right? Wow. This is all here, I'm translating it, but my Hebrew's not, like, you get the picture. She said, and then she screams at her, you should die. Oh. On Shabbat, you should die. I'm like, wow, this is really intense. Here's this like 70-year-old shouting at this 87-year-old that you should die tomorrow. Wow. This is where it leads to. This is where it leads to. If you reinforce the unwholesome states of mind, you end up being an old person telling another old person to die. Like that's where it goes. And at that point, changing those karmic patterns of mind, the unwholesome mind, is extremely hard. It's very hard because it's had so many years of practice. Part of our practice is observing all of this happening. Mindfulness is knowingfulness. It's knowing what's going on in your mind and what's going on in the world around you. It's not just saying I'm going to be like inner in my mind and, ignore the outside. It's understanding that continuity between yourself and the rest of the world. So you have a clear mind, and then you'll see clearly all the lack of clarity around you. But if you don't have a clear mind, you won't notice the lack of clarity around you and the unwholesomeness. You'll just take it as part of this is what it is. It doesn't have to be that way. It's all a product of the practice we do. My son has this app on his phone. I had never seen it, and a friend of mine told me it's very common. Take a photo of yourself, and then it can change you to look old. have you seen that? It's the most bizarre thing in the world. So, and also Yang, by the way. He did it for himself. The Yang didn't have any effect because it was all Yang. Right? And then he did it for me. And the Yang, it didn't look like me. But the thing about the old, and I kept it. Like, wow. It actually really did look, I looked like I was in my 80s. Not so angry. And but it was really, when we talk about contemplating impermanence, aging, sickness, and death, this was a visual prop. It was a visual prop. It was a visual aid for that. And I'm saying we can take something also, part of our practice can be that we can take things of the world around us, things that are often used in many different ways, and we can use them for our practice. We can appropriate some of the nonsense that's going on here and use it to strengthen our practice. So this image became like an important image for me to look at and say, aging, that's the truth of aging. That's like a weather prediction, Whether the weather is exactly going to be like that, I don't know. But the weather is coming. And it was helpful in a disturbing way. But contemplating aging, sickness, and death is disturbing. And that is part of our practice, is to be disturbed. What does disturb mean? It doesn't mean to be upset, right? Or maybe it does, I don't know. But being disturbed means your normal and comfort zone and sense of comfort is now being moved, right? And your perspective is being shifted, okay? Like moving the furniture around in the room, you come in, everything's disturbed, it can't make sense, I don't know where it is. So this type of disturbance can help disturb your sense of self. So you're not so sure where your sense of self is. And the sense of self that we tend to strengthen over time in a fixed image. You change that image and suddenly it disturbs you. So in a sense, our meditation practice, I know we sometimes think we want to discover and cultivate some inner peace. But in some ways, it's more important to be disturbed. To find what you observe disturbing. It'll disturb your sense of self. Like you sit and you're expecting some peace and quiet, and out comes some difficult memories or thoughts. Right? Or some old habits of mind, or some unwholesome states. That should disturb you. If it doesn't disturb you, there's something wrong. There's something missing. Meaning it's going to disturb your stability. Okay? Stability and security are two different things. You should be secure in your practice. Right? But having a stable sense of self is not what we want. Yeah. Because then you're stuck. So in terms of establishing our practice, which is what I wanted to talk about, establishing did I say a steady practice? Someone asked me before we sat tonight whether it's okay to give meditation a break. And it reminded me of a question that a student once asked Suzuki Roshi during a retreat. What do practitioners, yogis, or Zen students do in their free time? And he just laughed and kept repeating free time as he walked off and ignored the question. Because what free time? When do you take a break? When's it time off of being aware, mindful, and present? When do you take a break from that? Like, what? It's so hard that you need a break from what? Life? But that doesn't mean not taking a break from a specific form or a specific exercise that you're using in order to cultivate that awareness. So, the steady practice means that you're committed to cultivating that awareness every day throughout your day. The specific forms are for you to explore. Don't get stuck on the forms, but don't give them up. Right? Be flexible. See your practice like a form of yoga, where you want to stretch and you want to come back to some postures that you are cultivating and developing. But you also want to try new ones. So really the number one ground, starting point we want for establishing our practice is the intention we're bringing in to the activities of our day. Why are you doing what you're doing? I don't have your answer. You have your answer, which should be a temporary answer. But the question is vital in order to cultivate a sense of an intentional life. Not just one that we're kind of bouncing back and forth between, these unwholesome states of wanting, not wanting, or aversion and attachment. But rather, what am I consciously choosing here and cultivating? These are the questions we want to ask, and they will lead us to make choices that are more wholesome. Wholesome means that which does not cause harm, but which cultivates and develops good in your mind and in your life. Unwholesome is that which causes harm. Just keep these definitions clear and available to you. And you'll be able to pause throughout your day and say, is this cultivating the state of mind that I value? Or is it blocking it? This is the intention that we want to come back to again and again. If you want a steady practice, first and foremost, is about having that intention, in your pocket all the time, ready to pull out. What is this cultivating? The other thing for a steady practice is having conditions that support you, or having good props. What's the number one prop you need? It's not a cushion, it's not a room, it's not a sangha. Those are helpful. It's time. You need to give yourself time to not be so crazy active, but to slow down and appreciate some of the basic facts of being alive. That's the main prop you need for your practice. What's your rush? Appreciate this moment. Take the time to be here. Slow down and take extra time. That's the prop that will help your practice. The other thing that can help us sometimes is having a cue. What is a cue? A cue is like a sign or a hint or something. It's so easy to forget our better nature when we're surrounded with pressure and people. Now, it's really easy. It's just like go on the path of least resistance, which is where everyone's going down. And it's a selfish place. So we need little cues, little signs, to help us. What are your cues? Could it be a bell on your phone that every hour rings to remind you to stop for 1 minute? Yeah. Could it be a book or a journal that you're carrying in your bag? Some beads, a picture, a song. We need reminders. So that's helpful too. All these little things that we do in terms of a sitting place, like having flowers and a Buddha, having incense, having a candle, a bell, cushions and stuff, these are little sort of reminders of a state of mind. We can take them all away, but they're just little reminders saying, this is kind of a gentle reminder of a type of state of mind that you want to cultivate. Those are helpful to, find your own and have them in your room or with you. And the last thing is to make sure you take refuge in what's called the Triple Gem. And when I mean refuge, I don't mean, in some contexts, it means taking formal refuge, so that you take precepts and you kind of take a sort of formal commitment to a sangha. No, and Triple Gem being the Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha. Right? The Buddha here is that you're really taking refuge in the nature of your mind. Do you fully take refuge in the fact that you have a natural clarity and awareness that you're going to come back to and trust? Do you trust your mind? I don't mean your crazy mind. I mean your sane mind. The natural sanity that is behind all those thoughts that just pass like clouds in the sky. Behind the clouds, can you trust that? What's holding the clouds? That's Buddha. So you need to take refuge in that. And there's Dharma, which is, teachings. If you want to study practice, you do need to expose yourself more than we usually do to teachings. And the spiritual teachings, whether Buddhist or non-Buddhist, that will help awaken us further into that true nature of Buddha. Teachers and practitioners for thousands of years have been writing, discussing, and teaching it. They're available to us now more than any other time in history. More than any time. Every tradition is available with the click of a mouse. It's nuts. In fact, it's too much that we don't choose it. Like a menu that has 1,000 items. It's so overwhelming that you just close it. So, choose some teachings, listen to them, and be inspired. That will help with your practice when you're feeling kind of stuck. Right? Don't feel like you have to go it alone. You don't. You just don't. Even if you don't come to a Sangha, which is the third refuge of coming to a Sangha, Sangha is, it's good to have a group to join. So it gets you out. Gets you sitting, and when you sometimes feel like you need a bit of support so that you see other people doing it, and you support them. Sangha is also in general taking refuge in the fact that you're one of the many millions of seekers right now in this moment who are trying to awaken. Yeah. So whether it's the people in this room, or whether it's, sort of this big Sangha that we're part of, seeking awakening, then you can take refuge in that you're part of a real big Sangha. So take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Your mind, the teachings, the people who are seeking awakening. It'll help keep your practice steady when you're feeling like you need some support. So I'll finish with a quote from the Dhammapada that I came across that I wanted to share. So, there are a lot of quotes to read. You can open any one and it'll serve you well. But this is from the verses 110 called "A Single Day Lived." A single day lived with conscious intention and virtue is of greater value than 100 years lived without discipline and restraint. A single day lived with conscious intention and wisdom is of greater value than 100 years lived without discipline and without wisdom. A single day lived with conscious intention and profound effort is of greater value than 100 years lived in laziness. A single day lived in awareness of the transient nature of life is of greater value than 100 years lived unaware of birth and death. A single day lived awake to the undying state is of greater value than 100 years lived without recognizing deathlessness. A single day lived awake to the profound truth is of greater value than 100 years lived unawakened. So, the way I find these verses inspiring is that if we really want to practice, we take it one day at a time, a single day. It's just this single day we need to worry about. The rest of your life will take care of itself if you take care of today. It's this single day that you need to put your effort. And what it'll lead to is really not in your control, but today is. And that's how your practice will become steady. There'll be some time afterwards to speak if you wish.
I have a question. When you're talking about forsaking other people's afflictions or hindrances, so you're speaking about it in a sense that you have this natural tendency to kind of mirror the things that happen around us. But I was thinking about, what about forsake? Because many times I have these ideas about people around me. Oh, they're doing something bad. Oh, that's harmful. Criticism. And all these thoughts about, oh, this person is angry, he has this hindrance, you should let go of it. And so I was wondering if there's also maybe an aspect in that sense of letting go of other people's hindrances. in a sense of judgment, or not just how they affect us, but his ideas of what is the right way for a person to, they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. Because what's not really there in judgment is caring and compassion. Judgment is always at a distance, right? It's like, you should do this, and without my help. Yeah. Judgment is kind of like without compassion. So if there's compassion, like instead of going straight to the prescription of what they should do, there's sort of the acknowledgement of their suffering. Like, this person is suffering, you know. So if we just keep it at that, then what we're abandoning is taking on any of that affliction. Judgment is still taking on some of that affliction, right? So real abandonment comes from, you know, seeing the suffering in the situation and not wanting the suffering. So I think compassion is kind of the antidote. I am sorry. You know, this is painful. Because you know pain, so you can recognize that they're having pain. There's nothing really to judge there other than the fact that I wish their pain would end. Because it's just extending.
But even sometimes the thought of, this is causing them, like even the thought of, sometimes I feel that even that thought of trying to like think of what is good for them, and the thought of, that's causing them so much pain, they're so, like, they're ignorant, or they don't know how to do it, they're harming themselves. Like even there sometimes there is judgment and something that's doesn't feel.
Yeah, so you look at your own intention. Where is it coming from? You know, is your heart pure? Is it like mixed up with some sense of self? So yeah, we can use kind of spiritual qualities to enhance our sense of superiority. Yeah, that can happen. But you can also be aware of that happening. Let's finish.